Hell hath no fury like a flaming skeleton on a motorcycle.
Welcome to I'm Your Target Demographic. Today I am covering the basics of who are the Ghost Riders. And some of you may not know that there have been multiple people that have become the Ghost Rider. So we're going to cover who some of the prominent ones are, who some of the lesser known ones are, and some backstory into how they become the Ghost Rider, because that is also very different across the board. So I want to preface that there's going to be mistakes because I'm not perfect. So anything you notice that is wrong, let me know in the comments nicely, and I will acknowledge and try to add annotations or something, because this is way more complicated than I thought it was when I decided to start doing this video. There's also going to be things missing that you're going to think, oh, I hope he talks about this. I'm not really going into depth into their storylines, into what they do. This is really a basic, like, hey, I've heard of Ghost Rider, but I didn't know there were multiple Ghost Riders. Let's learn about it sort of video, not a in-depth look at what they do or their adventures. This is really superficial, but is meant as a starting point for those of you that just want to learn a little something and then can do more research into the ones that you're interested in. All right, so I'm going to start by talking about not the first chronological Ghost Rider, but the first Ghost Rider that really became popular in comics, and that is Johnny Blaze. And he's the Ghost Rider that most of you probably think of. That when you think of the leather jacket and the chains and the red fiery skull, that is Johnny Blaze. So I'm going to try to explain easily how Johnny Blaze became the Ghost Rider. Okay. All right, so I'm going to start by talking about the demon called Zarathos. And Zarathos is, there's a lot of demons, and he needs to consume souls. And so Mephisto, who is this kind of devil-like character in the Marvel Comics, sometimes lets him go to Earth and eat souls. And he does this through becoming the Ghost Rider. So he attaches to a man named Johnny Blaze, who is kind of the most popular Ghost Rider. Now, Zarathos' origin and how it connects to Ghost Rider is super confusing. But basically there are things called spirits of vengeance, which are basically angelic creations that help to give someone the power to seek vengeance against those that have wronged them or wronged others. It's believed that Zarathos is either the enemy of the spirits of vengeance or a spirit of vengeance himself that has kind of rebelled or turned evil. Regardless, he attaches to Johnny Blaze. Now, when Johnny is in human form, he's just a normal guy, nothing special about him. But as soon as he becomes the Ghost Rider, he gains all of these powers that make him basically unstoppable. He's immune to all damage. He can spew forth this hellfire that burns the very souls of people. He's immensely powerful, and his signature attack is something called the Penance Stare, where the Ghost Rider can look into the eyes of someone and make them feel all the pain that they've ever inflicted on others, which is basically what the Spirit of Vengeance would want to do. Why Zarathos also does this? Not so sure. So Johnny Blaze was Ghost Rider for a long time as he was bonded with Zarathos. Zarathos eventually becomes destroyed because he is an evil demon, and Johnny Blaze becomes empowered by a normal spirit of vengeance. So he is no longer under control of Zarathos, but is now a spirit of vengeance. Again, super confusing. Now, as we learn, Johnny Blaze was always destined to become a Ghost Rider, to be empowered by a spirit of vengeance. And why this is that a long, long time ago, his ancestors were basically kind of the first Ghost Riders. And one of them, his name was Noble Kale. And throughout the bloodlines, it was believed that Noble Kale's spirit, the spirit of vengeance, would give his ancestors that power. Now, when Johnny was taken over by Zarathos, the spirit then went to his younger brother, which he didn't even know about, named Danny Ketch. And it turns out these two were brothers, but were separated when they were young so that hopefully the curse wouldn't get them, but it did. So Danny Ketch is our second Ghost Rider, again, very popular throughout the 90s, kind of early 2000s. Often he's shown with a blue flame, but they are very inconsistent. So I have a hard time with some of the pictures deciding, is that Johnny? Is that, because when all you see is fire, it's really hard to tell who that Ghost Rider is. So I'm just going to show the pictures of the blue Ghost Rider right now because those are the only ones that I'm sure were Danny Ketch. Ketch actually wasn't a hero the whole time, because he went on this crazy adventure where he realized that the spirit of vengeance was kind of corroding his soul, and so he needed to get other spirits of vengeance and kind of absorb them and take them. So he was actually hunting down other Ghost Rider characters that were introduced during this arc, but other people that had spirits of vengeance, and he was like consuming them. So he was kind of this not nice guy for a long time, until he realized that this was all a ploy to destroy all the Ghost Riders, and he turned back into a good guy. Since then, Danny has basically been MIA. There's been a few comics that have referenced that he's around. As far as I know, he's still with the Spirit of Vengeance, but he's not an active character right now in the comic books, very off the grid. The third person that has been a mainstream Ghost Rider, and we'll go back and cover some more in a second, but the third that's really big is the current Ghost Rider, and that is a guy named Robby Reyes, who is very different than the other two in a couple different ways. Unlike the other two, he is not attached to a spirit of vengeance, but instead the person that gives him his powers is a man that kind of performed some rituals when he was alive. He was very into Satanism, and it's that killer's spirit that gives Robby Reyes his powers. But those powers are, as far as we can tell, the same as the spirits of vengeance. Robby is also very different in the fact that he doesn't have a motorcycle, but instead he has a car. So very stylistically different than the other Ghost Riders, that this car becomes his engine of destruction, or engine of vengeance, you could call it. So now let's look at some other past Ghost Riders throughout history that are interesting, but I'm not going to talk too much about. The first one is during the Civil War. There is a guy named Caleb that his horse became fire. Super badass. There's also a character named Carter Slade that was kind of a Wild Wild West kind of figure. He was called the Ghost Rider before the Ghost Rider characters were introduced, so there's not a whole lot in common. But Carter Slade was referenced in the Ghost Rider movies, for those of you that watched those, that he actually was a Ghost Rider, but in the comics they are really not attached. But it was a nice little nod in the movies. During the event Fear Itself, a woman took over the role of Ghost Rider called Alejandra. And during the Fear Itself line, the coolest thing that probably happened with Alejandra is she teamed up with X-23, the Red Hulk, and Agent Venom in a group called the Circle of Four, and they went on these adventures and they were, stopping people. And at one point, the Red Hulk took on the symbiote of Agent Venom and then took on the Spirit of Vengeance and became this badass amalgamation. And it's probably one of the coolest things I've ever seen in my life. Also during the early 90s, when it was kind of Ghost Rider was badass and fire was cool and spikes were cool, they introduced a character named Vengeance that was basically a opposite created by Mephisto to fight Ghost Rider, but it had kind of the same sort of powers, very visually similar. But he wasn't around a long time, was killed, gone. But for a while, he looked just like Ghost Rider. There used to be a series called 2099. And there would be different heroes that would get 2099 comic book arcs. So Spider-Man 2099, Hulk 2099, and Ghost Rider had a 2099 series as well. This Ghost Rider in the future, in the year 2099, is not possessed by a spirit of vengeance, but instead builds a suit and has like a chainsaw. So he basically gives up his physical body in order to fight crime, and kind of as an homage to the Ghost Riders of today. So he has like a hologram fire kind of thing going on. Super interesting. But the 2099 series, as far as I know, that doesn't happen anymore, which is a bummer. They should find a way to bring them back. So I think that's basically it. The ones that have made any sort of impact. If there's other Ghost Riders I forgot about, tell me in the comments. If there's things I got wrong, tell me. I did my best to make this as easy to understand as possible and give you little glimpses. If you think, wow, Ghost Rider 2099 looks badass, go look that up. Or if you think, oh, Danny Ketch looks cool, I want to hear about that storyline, it just gives you enough to go off of. So those are the Ghost Riders. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
Forget Ragnarok. I'm your destruction.